Hey everybody, welcome to a new video and what I'm now going to call Pollock Academy. Pretty neat, huh? And for this video, you see where I am. I'm out here on the Great Plains. And if you don't remember where the Great Plains are, they are right about here, okay? That middle America, Midwest region in between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains, all right? Remember what changed after the Civil War. It was people's perceptions of this area changed. It no longer was scary. It seemed like a place where people wanted to be. And really, it revolved around technology. If technology improves, life improves. And we start to see more and more groups of people move out west and settle in this area. And that's the subject of our video, the people of the plains, or people of the Midwest. We're going to see African Americans, we're going to see Europeans, we're going to see women take their shot at moving out west and starting a new life in America. So, without further ado, people of the plains, enjoy.
Alright, the people of the plains or the people of the Midwest. Remember, we're going to focus our attention on three groups: Europeans, African Americans, and women. First, we're going to talk about a big perception change of the Great Plains. It wasn't just the new inventions and adaptations that allowed you to live a better life out there, but there was a big incentive in 1862 called the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act was the government's way of getting people to settle the plains. Think back. People had been going to California, Oregon, Washington for a long time and just skipping over this region. But the Homestead Act was offering up to 160 acres, which is over 160 football fields, of free land. Now, was it really free? Not really. There were some rules. But I'd say it was about as close to free as you're going to get. Basically, if you were 21 and paid around $20 for the application fee and said you were going to be a farmer for 5 years, they would just give you this land. And to a lot, that sounded pretty good. And we see a lot of different kinds of people take advantage of the Homestead Act. Let's start with Europeans. We see immigration to America in waves, definitely in the next unit. But for right now, we're talking about the first wave. Look at this infographic. We are mostly seeing Northern and Western Europeans coming to America, and many went to the Great Plains to be farmers or to work just as they did in Europe. The first four big European groups were English, Irish, Scandinavian, and German, with some other countries thrown in there too. Today, you can even see some small towns that proudly display their European heritage, with festivals, parades, food, even the buildings and houses. Take a look at these examples. New Glarus, Wisconsin, Switzerland, Pella, Iowa, the Netherlands, Lindsborg, Kansas, Sweden, and New Ulm, Minnesota, with their German heritage. After the Civil War, the Great Plains and the rest of the West was a new opportunity for freedmen. One of the earliest groups of African Americans to go west were called the Exodusters, named after the book of the Bible, where the Israelites were freed from slavery in Egypt. With the leadership of Benjamin Singleton, they settled in Nicodemus, Kansas. After the Exodusters, we see a huge movement of African Americans to the plains and further west. All black towns on the west sprang up in places like Oklahoma, Wyoming, Colorado, and California. When we get to 1910, we'll see a great migration of African Americans to northern and western cities that last till about 1970. Last but not least, let's talk about women on the Great Plains. Recently, there has been research about women of all races moving out to the Midwest and farming under the Homestead Act. Remember, these were young, 21 and older, single women who filed claims under the Homestead Act. Some women went out for adventure and to own property. Some had left their husbands and ran away from their life back east, and some were widowed, meaning their husbands had died. These women rarely went out alone. They probably went out with a family member or a friend, or rather than farming, they went out to do a traditional job of a woman in those days, such as a teacher or a nurse. Historians have researched these women's primary sources, their letters, their diaries, and journals. That way, we have a first-hand account of the daily life of a homesteader. These letters and diaries told about a lot of things, from bad weather to church and community gatherings to their neighbors and how their crops were doing. The big picture is that women on the Great Plains led to a lot of changes in women's roles in America, the biggest being voting. The first state to allow women to vote was Wyoming in 1869, and finally in 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed that gave the women the right to vote nationally. Thanks for listening to People of the Plains.